Good day and welcome to another beautiful morning with Idea Television Newspaper Review. I am Jacobs Deborah. We'll be going through some headlines as well as front page top stories in Nigeria today. And the first newspaper headline we'll be looking at is the Guardian newspaper front page, where we see that Shetima laments depletion of 90% forest cover in page 5 of that newspaper. And in page 3, we see 2027 PDP declares Tinubu bad product governs IO first NEC meeting. And beside it, in page 7, we see that Awajile's burial, there will be a grave repercussion, says Ogun State's traditional chief. In the big headline, we see electricity tariff imbalance triggers new subsidy insufficiency debates. In page 6 of that newspaper, beneath it, we see that IGP pledges reform as retired officers protest poor pension under the contributory scheme. That story can be found in page 6 of that newspaper. And in page 3, we see that confusion in Labour Party as dirty works, tries more, aimed factions coalition moves. And beneath it, in Falana, Seni faults Kemi Bedok over citizenship claim in page 5 of the newspaper. And in page 3, we see Nigerian GDP hits 373 trillion naira and remains fourth biggest in African after rebasing. And beside it, we see that state FCT utilized 250 billion naira education grants worry UBEC. That story can be found in page 20. And the last headline in front of that newspaper, we see that court orders forfeiture of $222,729 recovered from Chinese nationals. That story can be found in page 7 of that newspaper. Moving on to the next newspaper front page is the Tribune newspaper front page, where we see that speculators panic as $1.31 billion FPI inflow market reforms narrows exchange rate gap, even as experts laud CBN for dividing rate convergence. Beside it, in page 15, we see Obi running mate Dati offers to resolve Labour Party crisis. The present at the NEC meeting by the Abo-led group. And beside it, in page 10 and 11, we see that late Alhaji Abdul Aziz Akiola Alao speaks Al Yesa Akiola Alao. And beneath it, we see that IGP caution protesting ex-police officers against external influence in page 8 of the newspaper. And in health, we have the novel blood test predicts Pisa months before onset. And a big headline, we see that Nigerian's economy expands record 3.13% growth in the first quarter. That story can be found in page 6, and beneath it in page 4, we have over 250 billion naira UBE intervention fraud utilizes by the government, UBE says. And in page 13 of that newspaper, we see that Lagos to launch 500 billion naira agricultural initiative to end food shortage. Moving on to the next newspaper front page, we have our Daily Times newspaper, where we see that the alleged 80.2 billion naira fraud again court denies Yahaya Bello overseas medical trip in page 2. And beside it in page 8, we see the Bauchi government to deploy drones to fight bandits. And the big headline we see in page 2 of that newspaper, that retired police officers protest in Abuja threatens to disrupt NAS. And beneath it in page 10, we see in 2027 only PDP can defeat Tinubu NPSA. And Rep investigates 25 insurance coil over alleged fraud in page 4. And also in page 10, we see the cracks in LP widens as OBVP identifies with Abo faction. And in page 5 of that same newspaper, we see that Imo Diaspora Group louds Tinubu approval of Southeast Investment Coil. The next newspaper I'll be looking at is the This Day newspaper front page, where we see that This Day Arise Media Group respond to the harassment and attack on free press freedom by the First Headco PLC. We also see beneath it that NNPC record 905 billion naira profit in June, as the Federation remittance hit 6.96 trillion naira in 5 months. That story can be found in page 5 of the newspaper. And one of the big headlines, we see that FG debts to Gencos hit 1.2 trillion in first quarter. Total arise exceeds 5 trillion naira. Generation companies kicks over news subsidies to EERC. And also the big headline, we have that after rising NBS puts on nominal GDP as $243 billion in 2024, even as economy grows by 3.13% in the first quarter of 2025. The next newspaper front page we'll be looking at is the Punch newspaper, where in page 35 we see that the Nigerian now spend half of its revenue on debt presidential panel. The chairman of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, disclosed that the country's current spend less than 50% of its revenue on debt serving, while serving the keynote speaker at PwC's Executive Summit on Nigerian tax reform with the theme New Tax Era in Lagos yesterday. Oyedele explained that the government was spending almost 96% of its revenue on debt serving before the economic reform. And in page 7, we also see that 2027, fresh LP crisis as Obi rejects dirty above peace deal. The camp of Labour Party presidential candidates in 2023 election, Peter Obi, has distanced itself from yesterday's reconciliation meeting between its former running mate, Dr. Dati Baba Ahmed, and Julius Abbo-led leadership. The Labour Party has been engulfed in a leadership crisis which was ignified in April after the members insisted they were the rightful leaders of the party. Moving on to page 7 of that same newspaper, we see that NAS shut down Natasha faces police block today, as suspended Senator Natasha Akpoti appears poised to resume her plenary today, despite the warnings from the Senate that her suspension remains in force and binding. The lawmaker representing Kogi Central, who was suspended in March, revealed over the weekend that she had formally notified the Senate of her intention to return, citing a recent court decision as her basis. And in page 25 of that same newspaper, we see that Electricity Act fallout, even as Gencos and Discos rage a state-begin tariff court. More states have announced plans to reduce electricity tariff in their jurisdiction after the Enugu State Electricity Regulation Commission issued a new tariff order to Main Power Electricity Distribution Limited, revising the electricity cost of Band A customers from 209 naira per kilowatt an hour which was 260 kilowatts per hour, effectively August 1st, 2025. And in page 38 of that same newspaper, we see that service sector fuels 3.13% economic growth as Nigerian gross domestic product rose by 313% year-on-year in real terms, and the first quarter of 2025. This is according to the latest report by the National Bureau of Statistics released yesterday. The growth rate represents a rebound from 2.27% recorded in the corresponding period of 2024, indicating a gradual strengthening of economic activities across major sectors. And in page 4 and page 5 of that same newspaper, we see that gunmen shot 2 Nigerians dead in South Africa. We hear that 2 Nigerians identified simply as Austin and Ayo have been shot dead by an unidentified gunman in Durban, South Africa. The incident occurred on Thursday, July 9th, and it was gathered that the gunmen, numbering 3, stormed Austin's office around 8 p.m. Upon gaining entry into the office, the gunmen, who were said to be wearing masks, met both of them and shot them on the spot. Moving on to the last headline on that newspaper, we see that Awujale, Ogun government prepares for legal battle with Ifa councils in page 9 of the newspaper. And the next newspaper we will be looking at is the Nation's newspaper. We're going on a short break, and when we come back, we'll be looking deeply into the newspaper. Thank you. Stay tuned. Welcome back if you're just joining us. This is your newspaper review on Idea Television. I am Jacob Deborah. Before we went on a short break, we were looking at the Nation's newspaper front page. So we'll be going into it quickly, where we see that this day Arise Media Group respond to the harassment attack on free speech and freedom of press by the First Headco PLC. And also beneath that same newspaper in page 2, we see that IG begs demands for better welfare by the retired policemen. And in the big headline, we see that state fails to utilize access of 250 billion naira UBEC cash. And beneath it, we see that 92 billion shared between January and June. Also, we see that Obi's 2023 running mate to contest for president in 2027. And beneath it also, we see that MBS reports Nigerian rebased GDP growth by 3.13% in the first quarter. That story can be found in page 3 of that newspaper. And in page 16 and 17, we see that state regulations to NAS, Central Gaming Bill violates Constitution and Supreme Court judgment. Now we'll be moving into our tech news for today. And on our tech news, we see that there's a startup for training AI to speak Nigerian language. We see that Equalize AI, an African-centric AI setup, is working to bridge the language gap in artificial intelligence by developing AI systems that can understand and communicate African languages, starting with Nigerian indigenous tongues, by collaborating with the native speakers and creating hypothetical motif. The test on the company's aim to preserve cultural identity and prevent language extinction. Founder Olubayo Akinmubi emphasized that the digital marginalization of African languages could deepen the digital divided and warning against future that deteriorates global languages controls on AI systems. The mission aligns with the goal to International Mother Language Day, which promotes the linguistic diversity and cultural preservation. Their focus on African languages is more than just a technical innovation. It is a cultural preservation to often help technology ease local identities by defaulting to global norms, and the Equalize AI is doing the opposite by building AI from the ground to up and reflect African realities. That is powerful. And on the case of correcting AI bias, most current AI systems are trained on English and other dominant global languages that centralize a digital bias and exclude millions of languages. But the Equalize AI is helping to correct that imbalance by making AI truly language indigenous and inclusive, which is essential to global fairness, and in preventing digital colonization by ensuring Africans' voice and languages are part of AI systems. The project helps to guard against a new form of digital colonization where only languages of global power shapes AI behaviors. Equalize AI is giving Africans agency to shape a new AI that speaks their native languages. A smart and strategic move by the Equalize AI. From an innovative standpoint, this forward-thinking African is the most linguistically diverse continent in the world. Training AI to its native languages and complexity now is just gradually responding to its gradually responding to its native language and traditions. It's also a smart business and research decision that can position African as a leader of AI in undeserved languages. So imagine if you have an AI who speaks Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, Efik, as well as other languages. It will be beautiful, don't you think? So the matter, because this has brought that equalized AI has come into the system to actually change its language from just English and French, the normal languages we know that AI actually exhibits, into exhibiting languages like the native African languages of starting with the Yoruba and Hausa and Nigerian indigenous languages. Now they've decided to gather the indigenous people of these lands to be able to speak their language well to this AI, and for AI to be able to comprehend and as much as comprehension is involved, to be able to also pass information and be able to communicate with people despite their language diversity. So on this matter, because of our language is part of who we are, AI only speaks foreign languages. But now it has changed, even as people working with different languages in Africa can speak and communicate to AI. Equalize AI wants to change all of the language diversity and language barriers that has kept people from interacting with AI, to solve local problems better and make sure that African isn't out of this digital future. If it's saying that the future is built on AI, I'm very sure that African will be wanting or would want to be part of the movement of AI by involving their languages also, and including all language in Nigeria as well as other African countries into AI systems in order to enhance good communication and good movement with the trend of AI in every technology space. I am Jacobs Deborah, and remember, this is your newspaper review. We've come to an end, and we were looking at different newspaper front page, where we saw in Tribune front page that Nigeria's economic expands record 3.13% growth in first quarter. And we also looked at the Guardian newspaper, where electricity tariff imbalance triggers news subsidy insufficient debate. And we also looked at the Daily Times newspaper, where retired police officers protest in Abuja threatens to disrupt NAS. We also looked at this day's newspaper front page, where after rebasing MBS puts nominal GDP at $433 billion in 2024. And we also looked at the Punch newspaper front page, where Gencos and Discos rage a state begin tariff cuts. And the last newspaper we looked at was the state failed to utilize access 250 billion UBEC crash. And the last news we looked at was our tech news, where we see that AI is walking into Nigerian languages, even as comprehending and being able to communicate in the future. Do stay with us even as we bring you more innovative programs after this, and do stay safe from Idea Television. Thank you very much.